So we want to talk a little bit about, as we're getting into this episode, about who should you listen to? Where do you get information from? I think it is one of the most common conditions in the kinds of people who can be small business owners, who can be entrepreneurs, is we go and figure things out ourselves. But let's face it, that's never the most efficient way to figure out something. So beyond being willing to be humble and learn, where do you start? Where do you go? Is it a trip to Google? Are there other resources out there? Who can you trust? What kind of information should you look for? John, you were touching on that a little bit, but I'd like to hear everybody's thoughts on that. Who can you listen to? I know you guys provide a unique resource. And I think let's start there. So let's start a little bit with TCHEM. You guys work with contractors. Most of them are self-employed, small business owner type people, and you do more than you sell them. You actually help them with their business, and it becomes a good thing. And I think part of that has to do with the fact you're creating a win-win scenario. If they are successful, it's a mutual benefit. If you give them bad advice, not only would you stand to lose a customer, they may not last, right? They make bad decisions. They don't stay in business. The customers dry up. So it becomes a win-win, a mutual thing. So you guys talk a little bit about what you do and some advice that you can give about where should people be going looking for help?
Well, what we've done is since we make our own chemical, we'll just use chemicals. We make our own chemicals, but we also rep several companies. So what we stress with our employees as they interact with our customers is refer them back to, especially the guys that we rep, because we don't know everything. We're not actively out here cleaning the substrates, the surfaces that they're cleaning. We just know what we're reading, what we're hearing from those customers, what we're hearing from the vendors, and we're kind of trying to tie that in to fit that individual. So as we grow in the industry, every day you grow. So we learn more every day. And a lot of that is hearing from our customers. So it's not about, yes, you want to close the sale. And yes, there's a time where you want to move on with certain things, but it's also taking the time to really invest in that customer. A, it's going to bring them back, but B, you're going to learn a lot of information. Why do you do this? Why is your trailer set up this way? Why do you use this chemical as opposed to this chemical? I know why we sell all these different chemicals, but I don't know why they sell those chemicals or why they chose to use those chemicals. Each individual uses chemical differently. They have different application, they have different strength, and that's all based upon their need. So what we do is we almost interview them every time they come in to find out more information. And we've also diversified our product line based upon what they want and what they don't want. Some things, some customers that are bigger will keep things on the shelf directly for them, because that's just a good service added. But most of the time what we've done is we've taken our business and manipulated it based upon need of our current customers. We would have never known that if we would have closed that avenue of communication off. On the other side of that with our vendors, yes, we will push certain products as they come out. Most of them aren't coming out with new products constantly. So then what it is, it's about diversifying that one particular product and how can it be used differently. Having one product that only does one thing is not beneficial, because it's very limited where someone needs just a chemical to do one thing. They want something that will clean multiple things because it's better for their bottom line. And they don't have 15 different products sitting on their trailer. If they can carry 2 products as opposed to 10, they save and win. So that's where we find all that information out.
So, for local cleaning contractors, for local washing contractors, and I still haven't quite nailed down how we're going to talk about your niche, because it's not just pressure washing. It's bigger than that. People can come here and they can get this information from you guys, how to set up their business, what type of work, what type of equipment, what type of chemical. They run into a problem, you can help them solve it. But if they don't have you as TCHEM, small business owners out there, and he doesn't have these answers.
Right.
How do they find somebody? What do they look for?
Let me put it in the right perspective. If you
Close to your mic.
want help from somebody, okay, whatever your business is, I don't care what it is. the person you need to be asking is the person who does it every day, not the hobbyist, not the person who's so diversified that they don't even know what they're doing, but somebody that's doing it every day. We just subbed a job in Greensboro because they were they were industrial, roll-up doors, big doors, heavy doors with, fusible links and so forth. So there's only certain people that do that. So we subcontracted to somebody who does it every day, because the chances of him making any mistakes probably are nil, because that's what he does. That's what he does. So my point is, if you want information, you have to go somewhere where they do it every day. So in the retail part here, we get so many people just walk in here and they're newbies, in the industry. And so they come to us because they've heard that because we do it every day, we can give them the information they need, and they can go out and experiment and see, those guys are right. Then you have a repeat customer. So whatever they're looking for, don't go to some guy who's repairing mowers in his backyard necessarily. Go to some place, has a full line of products and so forth. They're servicing, they're selling, they have all the parts in stock and so forth, and ask them questions and see if you can afford to have them work on your stuff and buy your parts and whatever. Anyway, I've made my point in that regard, I think.
Talk to your competition.
Yeah.
Don't be scared to go talk to your competition. Yeah. If you see a guy, say you're pressure washing, you see a guy pressure washing, stop and ask a question. What's the worst they can do? And tell you don't have time to do that. You need to do that. That's where humility comes in. Stop and ask, because you know what you're gonna find out immediately is why they're doing what they're doing. Most of the time, they're gonna tell you this. Now you can find everything on the internet. You can watch YouTube videos, but that only gives you so much information. But I think personally is you go out and you see someone doing it, you go ask that question. Even ask, can you work with them for a weekend? You've got to start somewhere. So be humble. Ask your competition.
Yeah. So it really depends on where you're at in your business. Right. As to how you might approach this. It goes back to paying your dues.
Exactly.
Maybe the thing you need to do before you start your business is go work with someone, even though that's not your 5-year goal, and say, look, I'm going to take the next year and I'm going to learn everything about this business. Yeah. That's not, that may be the best thing you could do. If you already have a business, finding other people in the same industry as you, it's been done for years. We've been a part of a couple of masterminds in the home inspection industry, and you see the largest concentration of 7-figure businesses where the average home inspection business is like $100,000 in these masterminds. It's a huge concentration. It's not because any of them are smarter than the average home inspector. It's because when you pool a bunch of people together who do the same thing, that's why it's called a mastermind.
Yeah, exactly.
But you pool together their experience and their knowledge. And that's not available in all industries, but the concept is there, right? So learning from other people, you got to get over this thing that everybody's your competition, because they're probably not. Yeah. So maybe it means pooling with people that are outside of your service area. But the truth is there's probably enough service work in the area if you've selected your right business for both of you and the other guy you're talking to, that you're not stepping on each other's throats by sharing information and best practices. So
I think you'll find that the guys that are fairly successful in business are usually willing to help the new guy. They're usually open to helping out. And you talked about going to work for someone, or you go asking questions. You want to make sure that the person you're asking is running a business like you want to run it. You don't want to, if you want to run a top-notch business, you don't want to go to the guy that's doing it out of the back of his truck or whatever.
Yeah. Well, you're going to, not even just that, but they may be further along in their business, but if you follow them, they may be taking you down a road you don't want to go.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about our experience in that, because I think that's the other side of it. It's not just the hobbyist. It can be people that appear to be successful in their business, but maybe their advice is to a place that you might not want to be.
Well, I just think that, sometimes that just takes just going through the process. You're going to go down some dead end roads, but, I'm not sure exactly. Maybe you need to talk more.
In one of the groups that we were a part of, we worked with some people, who were mentors of sort in the group, who had a large business, 14, 15, 16 employees, and fantastic top-line revenue. And as we got close to their business, we found out that their profits were dismal. I don't want to. I'm trying to be not inappropriate, but not where we wanted to go. And you got to be careful who you take advice from, because if you take 100% of advice from somebody about, they might lead you down to that same road, and it's because of how they hired, the benefits they provided, how they ran their business. They had built a monster that was money in the front, money out the back,
and working themselves to death. I mean, they did not follow the E-Myth book. Let's just put it that way. That's a bottom line.
Yeah. So you have to think a lot about who you get the advice from, but it is out there. It's like you said, people that are successful entrepreneurs are just like you.
Yeah.
And they're just as passionate and excited. And if you're excited about it too, they're going to want to talk to you about it. They're not going to be like, oh, you're my competition. They don't view you that way, especially if you're just getting started.
Yeah.
They're going to want to see the next. Man, being interested in people and giving people authority and that kind of respect is probably the nicest thing you can do to an entrepreneur. That's probably the most flattering thing you can do, is say, I admire what you do. Can I ask you a couple questions? So, I
think what you're saying right now, Brad, is key, because what you're doing is you're asking questions, but ultimately what you're doing is asking questions so you can listen. And I'm sure that's a hard thing for any entrepreneur to start with, is to listen, because you have a goal and you're driving forward. And I'm guilty of this, but as I've learned, as I've grown in age too, especially is when you step back and listen, the whole world opens up a lot, and it's amazing. Then you start honing your business based upon listening. And the questions that you're talking about and asking is so key to listen on the front end, because you're gonna limit some of the hurdles you're gonna have to go over just by listening. You're gonna take some of those out. So
you can avoid a lot of. There's no shortcuts, but you certainly can avoid avoidable mistakes.
Yes.
Right. I think the other thing to think about here when you're asking people for help, is you do have to consider who you're asking, and depending on what business you're in, you may be asking someone who has very limited time because you aspire to do something, and this person is successful in it. They're very soaked up. So you have to find a way to approach them where you're either providing them value back in return, or it's respectful of who they are, where they are, and the time that they have. If you're seeking information from someone who's super successful, you can't be like, "Can I have the afternoon to come hang out and bug you?" It doesn't work that way. So it is about, you have to consider the source, consider where you're at, where they're at, what you're asking, but the information is definitely there to be had. And it's the quality of information that you get. And that's the problem with YouTube. That's the problem. Yeah, everything's on the internet, but you have to decipher. No one is rating the internet and going out and saying, well, this is bad information, we're going to remove it from the internet. This is good information, we're going to put it to the top of YouTube. It doesn't work that way. And you certainly can't trust popular opinion. I've seen plenty of things that are very popular on the internet that are
no value whatsoever.
That you could avoid. So I think that's really good. So we talked a little bit about, want to talk a little bit about diversification today too, and how that can protect you. That's something I know that you talk a lot about, John. What do you mean by that? Why is it important? How does it factor into growing a small business? Let's say I mow yards or I wash houses. How does diversification apply to me?
Well, market saturation is something that you have to investigate on your own. I mean, we talked about plumbers. I mean, there must be 50 plumbers in this town, so obviously the market is saturated. Now, when you're going through a building boom period of time, which that's where we are now because interest rates are so low. Well, what about down the road when all of a sudden interest rates double, triple, quadruple? I can remember back in the 80s, the interest rates were 14%, on borrowed money, for instance. So all of a sudden, that market is no longer saturated. All right. So now those guys who did nothing but plumbing, residential plumbing, never bothered to diversify into commercial or industrial type plumbing, or never got into heating, ventilation, air conditioning besides plumbing and electrical. And you know who I'm talking about. Some of those companies over the years have done that. They do all three, HVAC, electrical, and plumbing. So they're they're in a good place because no matter what happens, they're always going to have something to do. And that's the best example I can think of diversification. What you see with people who used to be plumbers only, but were wise enough to go into HVAC and electrical. So no matter what happens, they're going to have, a stable wavelength as far as business. That's the importance of diversification. If you do only one thing, you're setting yourself up when something goes wrong in the economy that you're going to starve, man.
Yeah.
Because,
Well, I agree and disagree with that. I think that, yes, it is important to be able to survive in different conditions. But I also think that there has to be a thought to not diluting too, right? Because there's a difference between diversification and diluting who you are, what you do, how good you are at it. The old saying, you can be a jack of all trades and master of none.
you have to sneak up on it. You don't do it all at once.
There you go.
You stay
That's
with
important.
your primary source of revenue, and then you just gradually build on those sidebar businesses so that you're always covered, because you can always switch gears in midstream, but you always stay with your basic, like our basic thing here. We stay pretty much in that venue, but we're always ready to jump over into another area. That's my point. That to me, that's what diversification is. You're ready to make a move if you have to.
Mm-hmm.
When one segment, like we're heavily involved in the transportation industry, well, all of a sudden, we go into a mild recession or whatever, and the transportation industry starts to dry up a little bit, and of course, in good weather, and basically we're talking about wash chemicals, to wash transportation equipment, drive-throughs or manual washing, whatever, because this is an enormous trucking center in this area. Well, all of a sudden you come up on the spring and the weather's nice. Well, people stop washing their trucks so much. All right. So all of a sudden that market begins to dry up a little bit, So what are you going to do now?
Well,
Case in point.
I think thinking about what you guys do as a business is a good example of probably the right way to do that. There is still a core focus in your business.
Yeah.
You're not saying, well, wash chemicals are a little slow, so I think we're going to open up a car service shop next door.
No.
And then maybe in the summer, that's a good time to have an ice cream truck. That's not diversification.
That's 180 degrees out.
But some people think that way.
Yeah, but that's a mistake. You stay close. You stay close to where your roots are.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because over the years you're building on your database, your internal database. You're building. Because like I always said, I always came back to where I started because I'd already built on that, so I could build on it again and again and again. After a while, you become an expert in your field because you're stacking up all this information. And if you retain it and you rehearse it, then you've got something to share with people because, new people are coming into the workforce all the time because the old timers are retiring and they take all that information with them. And once they retire, they're done. They flush it. You can call them up and they'll say, I don't care about that anymore. I'm done. I flushed all that. And I'll say, man, I need some of your contacts. Well, I forgot them all. I threw all that away. When I retired, it was over. So anyway, I think I made my point about diversification, but you better diversify. Don't stay in one venue.
Yeah, I think it's along that line. I think that diversification is critical. I mean, there's seasons. There's, winter,
Yes.
summer, whatever. If you're in a business that you can only work in this, do your profession during the summer, you need to find something to do in the winter. In construction, the seasons would be maybe the economy. The economy's strong, people are buying houses, but when things slow down, there's usually still, some renovation jobs to do, that kind of thing. So, still in the same field, still have dealing with the same, basically elements, if you will, but being able to do both is critical.
Right. You can stay in your niche and diversify.
And one of the most important aspects of this, and I think we've already touched on that in a previous segment, is once people trust you, they want you to do other things for them. Okay. If you're already diversified enough, you can say, yeah, I can do that. But if you got to start from scratch and say, well, I've never done that before, I don't know if I want to do that. Well, immediately you've lost that sale. But if you're already up to speed, so you can make a quick move and say, yeah, I've got some of those tools on the truck or at the shop or whatever, I can do that for you. There you go. And so they want you to do other things. We have customers, we do a half dozen different things for them because they know that they're going to get a fair shake, whatever they ask us to do. So there you go.
Any thoughts on that other than?
Nope. Good.
Well, I think diversification requires you not to be too proud. Because most diversification is something you don't want to diversify from because it's outside of your normal business. Yeah. So if you're too proud to take that on, I'll use some of our customers, for instance. They wash homes throughout the year. They do concrete. They do this. But when the winter comes out, they'll hang Christmas lights. Who wants to hang Christmas lights for someone? Someone's going to pay you to do it. Does it really matter if you hung a Christmas light versus washing a house? It's like a box score in baseball. If it's a single, it's a single. It doesn't matter if it was blooped or if it was lined. It's the same thing. So ultimately, the diversification, you've got to be willing to do that. We've just kind of diversified out into another venue, and it wasn't because we wanted to. It was because it was necessary. So, but yet it still deals with service. It still deals within the same venue, but it's just another product to sell because we were asked to do it. Now, we didn't do it before 6 to 8 months worth of research and 6 to 8 months worth of thought and talk. Then we decided to diversify in it. But we wouldn't have gone that direction unless we were asked to do it. Then we decided that it was right to do that. So, I mean, but I think diversification is you have to be willing to do something different, humble yourself, all within the same arena. I think you guys have all touched on that.
Yeah, I think that it's critical. And I think maybe, John, you talked about this. You have your main focus. You don't need to ever leave your main focus. You need to establish it. You need to, be firmly grounded in that prior to taking on other things. Mm-hmm. That kind of, if you're one to, chase things down rabbit holes, whatever, if you just before you have your income and your business established, I mean, you'll never reach that goal if you're all over the place.
You may be a custom home builder, but if somebody asked you to build a 2-car garage and things are slow, you're going to build the 2-car garage, right?
You're still building. You're still, you're still doing that.
But that was in the military. I always said, marching or fighting, the pay's the same.
Yeah.
It's the principle. Yeah.
We, for years, have watched people who have always impressed me, and they're able to think, you always call it contrarian thinking, and when it is winter, they're thinking summer. When it's summer, they're thinking winter. When the craze is on to do X, they're prepared for the shift. And if you know your business and you're following what's going on, so if you're in a business that's tied to construction where the economic waves are what brings in business or not, or you're in a business that is purely seasonal and you know this going into it, having foresight and a plan for how you shift from time of year to time of year or season to season can mean the difference in you leapfrogging ahead of everyone else in your industry. In the real estate world, when the frenzy is on, that's the time to be pulling your resources back, because when things blow up, who has the money to go buy things when they're pennies on the dollar?
That's right.
Or in a seasonal business, it is gearing up at the end of by the end of the season. So you're not waiting till October when it cools down. If you have a summer or warm and you're like, now what am I going to do? And that's when you end up in a position where you have to be totally humble and do whatever comes along. But that was going to happen. Mm-hmm. If you had been willing to admit it, you knew that in the spring, right, that it was going to die in the fall. So having a plan, being able to say, okay, in the winter I do this, in the summer I do this.
Right. That's right.
You can have that. You can have that foresight. It's about understanding what you want to do and what the limitations and the nature of your business are.
Yeah, back to the mowing yards or pressure washing and hanging lights. Yes. In the summer while you're busy, when knowing that things are going to slow down in the winter, you could be letting your customers know, hey, I'm going to be hanging lights this Christmas or whatever. Be happy to help.
That's right.
As opposed to last minute trying to knock on some doors and scrambling around.
Yeah. So. And you're going to be a lot more confident asking when you're busy. You think about nobody wants to hang Christmas lights, and all your housing customers are potential light hanging customers. Right.
Well, it's like you're in the season you're in, you're managing, but you're looking as the entrepreneur out to the season you're not currently in.
Yeah.
So
yes.
I think both of you guys said that. That's key. You have to be that.
You got to be. Jim Rohn always said you have to think like an ant in the summer, the ants preparing for winter, and the winter, the ants getting ready for the summer. They're never just in the moment riding it out, you know.
That's right.
But if you don't have a team, you don't on top of your numbers, you're not doing all these things, you're going to be flying by the seat of your pants, and you're never going to even have a moment to think about, much less execute anything with any foresight into the future. So all this stuff we've been talking about ties together.
Yeah.
And it's all part of running a business. So I think that wraps it up for this episode. Appreciate everybody listening. If you have questions, drop them below. We will answer them in a future episode. We will see you guys next time.